Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
About a year ago, Nike made what I would argue is one of the biggest decisions they've ever made when it comes to their own football boots, and that is the discontinuation of anything kangaroo leather. Not natural leather entirely, but specifically kangaroo leather. With this announcement coming at the tail end of the Tiempo Legend 9's life cycle, which inevitably meant that whatever was next for the Tiempo series, for the first time ever, there would not be a kangaroo leather upper offered. Which brings us back to 10 months ago when Nike launched the Tiempo Legend 10, the first Tiempo to controversially only be offered in a full synthetic upper. Not just taking away the kangaroo leather upper from the well-established Tiempo fan base, but taking away natural leather entirely and replacing it for full synthetic. And don't get me wrong, I think the Legend 10 is a great pair of football boots, as I've talked about many times on the channel, but can it really be called a Tiempo without the kangaroo leather upper? That is a question that's completely up for debate. Because let's be honest, while these do have some leather-like qualities, they just don't compare to the real thing. And that really was the DNA of what made most people want a Tiempo Legend in the first place. Luckily, despite Nike's announcement and of course the discontinuation of the kangaroo leather Legend 9, the Nike Premier 3, which predates the Legend 10, was still available with a kangaroo leather upper. However, 6 months ago, out of nowhere, no official announcement from Nike, the product page descriptions on the latest colorways of the Nike Premier 3 changed entirely. Instead of being listed as kangaroo leather, they were now listed as being full synthetic leather-like uppers. Luckily for Nike, because this wasn't communicated very well, because let's face it, how many people actually read the tech specs on the product page on Nike's website? Most people had no idea that this change had been made. And as I've shown on this channel, basically over the last 6 months, I've been periodically bringing in new colorways of the Premier 3, where I would guesstimate since 6 months ago, Nike have probably put out 10 to 12 new colorways, and every single one, as far as I can tell, has been a natural leather upper. There has yet to be a full synthetic version of the Nike Premier 3 released to the public, at least that I've seen. Why change the tech specs to synthetic on the product page then? I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think we're ever going to get any clarification from Nike, but like I've said many times on this channel before, the tech specs on websites, even if it's from the official brand, can often be wrong. Something that I believe to have been the case with the Nike Premier 3 over the last 6 months or so, because if you go back to Nike's website now, on the latest colorway drops of the Premier 3, you'll find that the tech specs have been changed once again, where it no longer says that these have a synthetic upper, but instead a supple natural leather material. So not kangaroo leather, but cow or calfskin, whatever it may be, it's natural leather, which ultimately, once the boots are broken in and the leather's had some time to soften up and mold to your feet, the type of leather doesn't matter quite as much. My running theory is that the sales of the Nike Tiempo Legend 10, aside from a select few super limited colorway drops that did sell out, overall, the sales of the Legend 10 have been extremely poor for how the Tiempo has done for basically the last several generations. Despite not getting as much marketing attention as, say, the Phantom series and of course the Mercurial series, it's always been a top seller for Nike, especially at that top end price point. But in the case of the Legend 10 Elite, the Pros, and even the Academies, they're just nowhere near as popular as they used to be. And I think that can only be attributed to Nike's decision to get away from maybe kangaroo leather, but maybe also natural leather entirely. Because again, you can try to simulate the real thing, but is there really anything quite like actual natural leather? In my opinion, no. Where within the same 10-month period, sales of the Nike Premier 3, while it was always a really good selling pair of football boots because it's the last remaining natural leather football boot from the Nike brand, it's just been extremely popular with every colorway drop pretty much selling out within a couple weeks. And that's something that I think Nike has recognized and realized, that if they transition this into a synthetic football boot, it is very, very likely that the same fate of the Tiempo Legend 10 would happen with the Nike Premier 3, where again, despite really not getting any marketing attention from Nike, it's one of their top sellers, especially around that $100 price point. It seems to me that the people have spoken with their wallets, and they are directly telling Nike that they want natural leather over synthetic when it comes to something that resembles a Tiempo. And right now, the Premier 3 with its actual leather upper is far more Tiempo-like than the actual Tiempo with its synthetic leather upper. What does this mean for the future of leather football boots from the Nike brand? I think it can only be a good thing, where if you asked me about a year ago if Nike was going to produce any leather football boots, I would have told you no. But given what has happened with the synthetic version of the Legend 10, where it's entirely possible that this is just the new concept, and once Legend 11 comes out, whenever that may be, people will be more likely to give this concept a go, or maybe the design will just be so good that everyone will buy them, because that is something that Nike has been known to do more times than once. But at this point, given what has been more or less a flop from a sales perspective, despite this being, in my opinion, a good performing pair of football boots, while I don't think we'll ever see kangaroo leather from Nike again, I do think it's entirely possible that the next generation Tiempo might go back to a natural leather material, which I think would make a lot of people very, very happy. And for those that don't know, that are asking why not just bring back kangaroo leather, I think a lot of that has to do with California in general, the state in the US that has banned the sale of kangaroo leather products, with other states likely to follow suit and other countries likely to follow suit as well, which from a sales perspective in the US alone, which is still a gigantic market for any major sportswear brand, California is the biggest chunk of that market. So having a pair of football boots that would not be able to be sold in the biggest section of one of their biggest markets just doesn't make a lot of sense for any brand, which is why we've also seen Adidas transition away from kangaroo leather along with Puma. And look, this is a point we could argue all day long. I think there's a lot of people that are of the opinion that they're transitioning away from natural leather, and specifically kangaroo leather, just because synthetic from a material standpoint are significantly cheaper for them to produce. And that's something that is more than likely very true. Nike as a brand, while dedicated to going away from kangaroo leather, they're not getting away from the use of natural leather. If you look at just their retro Jordan sneakers alone, leather is a very popular material that is very regularly in use. So for them to make the push, especially on a pair of high-end football boots that they're charging so much money for, yeah, I do think it is probably a little bit of a cost-cutting measure, where with some fancy marketing, they thought they could dance their way around it. But as we've seen again with the sales of the Tiempo Legend 10, while they've created a great pair of football boots, longtime fans of the Tiempo Legend series know this isn't really a Tiempo, which is why they're not buying it. So in short, Tiempo goes synthetic, Nike Premier is supposed to follow. They realize that's a bad idea, transition it back into a natural leather boot, even though it never really transitioned into a synthetic one in the first place, at least as far as we can tell. And it looks like moving forward, this will remain a leather product, which for the future of Nike football boots, and I guess more specifically the Tiempo series, is it possible that the next generation of Tiempo will be leather again? 10 months ago, I would have told you no, but now I'm not so sure.